The dinner rush had thinned from chaos to a low, exhausted murmur by the time Emma reached the corner booth near the window. The restaurant still smelled of seared steak, garlic butter, and coffee that had been sitting on the warmer too long. Her feet ached in a way that no amount of stretching ever fixed, and the thin strap of her apron dug into her waist as if it, too, were tired of holding everything together. The man in the booth had arrived alone just after 7, escorted personally by the manager, who'd smoothed his tie twice before even saying hello. Emma hadn't needed the whispered name to recognize him. Victor Hale. Everyone had seen his face on magazine covers and financial news thumbnails, always serious, always composed, the kind of man whose expressions never betrayed what he was thinking. His presence had changed the tone of the entire dining room. Servers straightened, the kitchen worked faster, and conversations softened, as if money itself had weight and sound. Emma had been assigned to his table without asking. She'd noticed the flicker of hesitation in her manager's eyes, the unspoken calculation. She was competent, polite, invisible. Safe. Victor hadn't looked up when she greeted him, only nodded once and closed the menu after a few seconds. The salmon, he said. No sides. That was it. No small talk. No special requests. He ate slowly, methodically, barely touching the water she refilled twice. When she checked in, he responded with a brief, fine, or, thank you, his voice calm but distant, like he was somewhere else entirely. Emma found herself oddly grateful. Some customers drained her with forced cheer or quiet cruelty. This man simply existed, heavy and contained, like a closed door. As the evening wore on, Emma caught glimpses of him staring out the window, watching headlights smear across the rain-streaked glass. Once, she thought she saw something shift in his expression, weariness, maybe, but when she looked again, it was gone. She wondered, briefly, what it must feel like to have so much money that dinner was never a question. Not a calculation. Not a trade-off against school shoes or electricity bills. The thought faded as another table waved her down, a child crying over spilled soda. By the time she returned to Victor's booth, his plate was nearly untouched. He placed the billfold at the edge of the table with deliberate care, as if even that small action deserved intention. Whenever you're ready, he said. Emma picked it up, offering her practiced smile. Thank you. I'll take care of it. She walked back to the service station, weaving past chairs and murmured conversations, her heart lifting just a little despite herself. She didn't expect generosity, but she always hoped. Hope was stubborn like that, it showed up even when you told it not to. She opened the billfold. The total was exact. The tip line filled in neatly. $0. For a moment, she thought she'd misread it. She blinked and looked again. Nothing. No extra bills tucked inside. No scribbled note. Just 0, written clearly, decisively. The familiar hollow sensation spread through her chest, heavy and practiced. It wasn't anger, she'd learned long ago that anger wasted energy she didn't have. It was disappointment, sharp and quiet, followed by the automatic math in her head. That could have been groceries. That could have covered half of daycare for the week. That could have meant she didn't have to choose between gas and laundry. She folded the receipt carefully, smoothing the crease with her thumb. She would not cry. Not in the break room, not in the bathroom, not on the bus. Tears were a luxury, and tonight she couldn't afford them. Straightening her shoulders, she returned to clear the table. Victor Hale was already standing, coat on, his chair pushed neatly back. He met her eyes briefly. Have a good evening, he said. You too, Emma replied, her voice steady despite the ache behind her ribs. He nodded once and walked away, footsteps unhurried, as if he had nowhere pressing to be. The door closed behind him with a soft chime, and the restaurant seemed to exhale. Emma reached for the plate. Her fingers brushed something beneath it. She froze. Carefully, she lifted the plate and saw a thick, cream-colored envelope resting flat against the table. It hadn't been slid carelessly, it was placed with intention, aligned perfectly with the edge. Her name was written across the front in clean, deliberate handwriting. Emma. Her pulse jumped. She glanced around instinctively, but no one was watching. The manager was arguing with the kitchen about a ticket, another server laughed near the bar. No one seemed to have noticed anything unusual. Her first thought was embarrassment. A complaint, maybe. A note explaining exactly why she deserved nothing. Her second thought was fear of hope creeping back in, uninvited. She slid the envelope into her apron before she could change her mind and finished clearing the table on autopilot. The rest of her shift blurred together. Plates, glasses, receipts. Smiles she didn't feel. Words she didn't remember saying. When she finally clocked out, the night air hit her like a cold wave. Rain misted her hair as she hurried to the bus stop, the envelope pressing warm and heavy against her hip. She didn't open it there. She couldn't. It felt too fragile, too important to expose under flickering streetlights and impatient glances. On the bus, she took the seat by the window, her reflection ghosted in the glass, tired eyes, loose hair, a face older than it should have been. The city slid past, neon and shadows melting together. With a steady breath, Emma reached into her apron and pulled out the envelope. Her name stared back at her, calm and certain. She opened it slowly, as if the contents might disappear if she rushed. Inside was not cash. Instead, there was a handwritten note, the ink dark and precise, and beneath it, a sleek black key card that caught the dim bus light. Emma's breath caught as she read the first line. Whatever this was, she knew one thing with sudden clarity. The zero on that receipt hadn't been the end of the story. The next morning arrived too quickly, gray light pressing through the thin curtains of Emma's apartment long before her alarm rang. She lay still for a moment, listening to the familiar sounds of the building waking up, the neighbor's shower rattling the pipes, a door slamming somewhere down the hall, a baby crying through the wall. Her son slept beside her, one small hand curled into the fabric of her t-shirt, his breath warm and steady against her arm. For a few seconds, the memory of the envelope felt like a dream. Then she saw it on the nightstand, perfectly real, the black keycard resting on top like a challenge. Emma eased herself out of bed, careful not to wake him, and moved to the kitchen. The floor was cold, the refrigerator nearly empty, the calendar on the wall marked with bills circled in red. She brewed weak coffee and stood at the counter, staring at the note again. You reminded me of someone who once helped me when I had nothing. This is not charity. It's an opportunity. Come at 9 a.m. No signature. No explanation. Just an address printed at the bottom, downtown, in the financial district she usually only passed through on the bus. Every sensible part of her argued against going. Men like Victor Hale didn't change lives with mysterious notes. Opportunities came with traps, expectations, costs she couldn't afford. She had a shift later that afternoon, a babysitter to pay, responsibilities that didn't pause for curiosity. But another part of her, the part that stayed awake at night planning impossible futures, had already decided. By 8:30, Emma stood on the sidewalk across from the glass tower, her reflection fragmented across its mirrored surface. She wore her best blouse, ironed carefully that morning, and shoes that pinched but looked respectable. The building rose above her like a monument to a world she had never belonged to. She crossed the street before she could turn around. Inside, everything gleamed. Marble floors, quiet footsteps, the low hum of efficiency. She approached the security desk, rehearsing explanations in her head, but the guard glanced at his screen and smiled. Ms. Carter, you're expected. The elevator ride was silent, smooth, too fast. Numbers climbed. Her stomach tightened with each floor. When the doors opened, a woman in a tailored suit led her down a hallway of glass walls into a conference room overlooking the city. Sunlight flooded the space, sharp and clean. Victor Hale stood near the window, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, staring down at the streets below as if he were measuring them. He turned when Emma entered, his expression unreadable. You came, he said. I almost didn't, she admitted, surprising herself with the honesty. He gestured to the chair across from him. Most people wouldn't have. She sat, folding her hands together to keep them from shaking. I didn't understand the note. That was intentional, Victor replied, taking his seat. Clarity comes after curiosity. Silence stretched between them, heavy but not uncomfortable. You probably think I stiffed you, he said finally, his tone even. Emma hesitated. I thought I'd done something wrong. He shook his head once. If I'd left you money, you would have thanked me and forgotten me. If I'd left nothing, you would have remembered. Her breath caught, but she said nothing. I left no tip because I wanted you to look under the plate, Victor continued. Because I wanted to see what you'd do with uncertainty. She frowned slightly. I don't understand. He leaned back, studying her with a focus that made her feel both exposed and strangely respected. I watch people for a living. Patterns, habits, reactions. Most servers would have assumed the worst and thrown the envelope away, or pocketed cash without a second thought. You didn't. How do you know? She asked quietly. You showed up, he said simply. Victor reached into his briefcase and placed a folder on the table, sliding it toward her. The weight of it felt heavier than paper should as she opened it. Her heart began to race. Inside were pages she recognized instantly. Typed, organized, refined, but undeniably hers. A catering concept centered on affordable, home-style meals for working families. budget projections, sample menus, even her original name for it, scribbled once in a notebook she'd never shown anyone. Emma looked up, stunned. How did you? You talk when you think no one important is listening, Victor said gently. You mentioned it months ago, late one night. You were exhausted. Honest. You didn't pitch it. You just believed in it. Her throat tightened. It was just an idea. All businesses start as just ideas, he replied. Most die because no one with power bothers to hear them. He slid the black key card across the table. That's access to a shared workspace, commercial kitchen included. The foundation covers startup costs for the first year. After that, the business is yours. Emma stared at the card, afraid to touch it. Why are you doing this? Victor's gaze drifted to the window again. When I was 19, I slept in my car and worked nights washing dishes. One woman, just a woman doing her job, let me take home leftovers instead of throwing them away. She never asked for anything. She never treated me like I was invisible. He met Emma's eyes. Last night, neither did you. Tears burned, but she held them back. This feels like too much. It's exactly enough, he said. And it's not a gift. I expect you to succeed. I expect you to work harder than you ever have. A breath she hadn't realized she was holding escaped her. And if I fail, then you'll fail having been seen, Victor replied. That alone changes people. Emma closed the folder, her hands finally steady. The city outside no longer looked distant. It looked possible. Thank you, she said, the words small compared to the moment. Victor stood, signaling the meeting's end. Don't thank me yet. Thank yourself when you open your doors. As she left the building, sunlight warming her face, Emma felt something unfamiliar settle in her chest, not relief, not disbelief. Permission. The $0 tip hadn't taken anything from her. It had cleared the table for everything that came next.